Hello and welcome to another short video on Ask the Experts, where I take you through the most trending and searched topic online pertaining to the cybersecurity industry. In this, we take up questions asked by our viewers, clients, and even the observations that we have done in our projects across the world. And most of these questions are also that something that we have seen posted on our YouTube channel that you can see on your screen. So far, in the upgrade from PCI DSS 3.2.1 to 4.0, I have completed 10 requirements, requirement 1 to 10. And if you have not seen it, this is the right time. You need to go and see all of them. They are definitely going to be a huge value add to you. In this video, I am moving on to requirement number 11. And before we head into it, have you subscribed to our channel so far? If not, you should, because every week we upload one new video or the other. And while you are clicking on it, click on the bell icon also so you get notified when new video gets uploaded. So moving ahead. So straight up, in the earlier version, PCI DSS 3.2.1 requirement 11 was titled as regularly test security systems and processes. But in this new version, it has been updated to test security systems and processes. The word regularly has been dropped. So why? There is a good reason for that, because thinking about it, it looks like regularly test sounds more better than just test. But there is a reason. In PCI, nothing gets done without a proper rationale from the council. So in PCI DSS 4.0, a new requirement has been introduced, which speaks about roles and responsibilities, which mandates that organizations clearly define and document the roles and responsibilities related to maintaining compliance with PCI DSS requirements. Now, this requirement is there in all the 12 requirements of PCI DSS, and it is a mandate from day one. It's not a best practice until March 31st, 2025. From day one of the release of PCI DSS 4, it's a mandate. Now, in PCI DSS 3.2.1, there was requirement 11.1, which mandated that all organizations implement processes to detect and identify unauthorized wireless access points on a quarterly basis. Now, this requirement, outlined as 11.1 in PCI DSS 3.2.1, has been moved to requirement 11.2.1 in PCI DSS 4.0. Now, this update clarifies that the intent of the requirement is to manage both authorized and not authorized wireless access points, ensuring complete oversight. Additionally, it specifies that this requirement applies even if there is a policy prohibiting the use of wireless technology. This is extremely important because, as a company, you've been involved in PCI DSS since it was version 1.2 back in 2008, which is like 17 years back. And always when this requirement used to come in PCI, the earlier versions, or even 3.2.1, the pushback from the client would be, we don't use wireless in the organization. And then we have to tell the client, yes, even if it is not there, you still need to check for the use of unauthorized wireless technology in the organization. So this requirement 11.2.1 clarifies that the intent is to manage both unauthorized and authorized wireless access points. So moving further, in PCI DSS 4, the new requirement is there, 11.3.1.1, and this has been introduced to manage all applicable vulnerabilities identified during internal vulnerability scans that are not ranked as high or critical. Again, this is very important. The reason being, earlier companies would only look at closing the high and critical vulnerabilities, and they would literally drop. I'm not joking. They would drop out the medium and low vulnerabilities. Now, what happens is, I'm sure that many of you would be aware that in the world of these technical vulnerabilities, a vulnerability that was ranking low one day would shoot up to critical the very next day because somebody found a new way to exploit this vulnerability and get a huge amount of data out or cause damage. And it could also be vice versa. Yes, but many times it is low and medium that scales up to high and critical, and very rarely it's the other way around. Very rarely. So this mandates that organizations fix all the vulnerabilities. Of course, I can still say that you can drop out some informational ones, but medium and low, you have to give some verifications or closure note on that. So in version 4.0, a new requirement, one more has been added, that is 11.3.1.2, and this mandates the performance of internal vulnerability scans using authenticated scanning methods. Now, this is again, I was so happy to see this new update. You know why? Because earlier companies would do a black box scan, and in that, as you know, you get nothing other than some ports opened or maybe some certificates expired and all that shit. But otherwise, there was nothing. We knew that authenticated is required, and we would try and convince our clients that you need to do an authenticated scan, but they wouldn't, because many a time they wouldn't, rather, not all of them, many a time they wouldn't, because it's not a mandate. But this is very important. And I'm sure that you'd be aware that even ASV scans earlier, companies were doing it like in a black box scan, which was literally rubbish, means there was nothing in it. Entire web application, they were doing ASV scans without any sort of authentication. So what do they get? A blank page. So this was very important update from the council, and this is a summary of whatever changes are there. I hope that helped. And moving ahead, in PCI DSS version 3.2.1, requirement 11.2.3 mandated that organizations perform internal and external network vulnerability scans after any significant change to the network, such as new system installations, modifications, or upgrades. In the latest PCI DSS 4, this requirement has been broken up into two separate distinct requirements. One is 11.3.1.3, which is for internal vulnerability scans, and 11.3.2.1 for external vulnerability scans. So this creates a clear distinction and focus on the need to perform and rescan both internal and external networks after any significant changes. So this makes it all the more important to implement both these scans on a very serious note. So additionally, requirement 10.6 in version 3.2.1 has been eliminated in version 4, and it is considered as a null requirement, with all its content being now assimilated or redirected to other existing requirements. Now in PCI DSS 3.2.1, there was the requirement 11.3 that requires organizations to conduct penetration tests at least annually and after significant changes to the network or environment. But in the latest PCI DSS 4, this requirement outlined in 11.3 has been incorporated in requirement 11.4.1. And here it provides clarification on several aspects. One, the organization must define, document, and implement a penetration testing methodology. Then second, retain testing results for a minimum of 12 months. Third, include a documented approach for assessing and addressing the risk associated with exploitable vulnerabilities and security weaknesses identified during the testing. And next is distinguish between internal penetration testing, which is performed like within the network, and external penetration testing, which is conducted from outside the network. Now in PCI DSS version 3.2.1, requirement 11.3.3 mandates that organizations perform penetration tests in accordance with the approved testing methodology. Now, in the latest PCI DSS 4, requirement 11.3.3 has been clarified under requirement 11.4.4, and this states that penetration test findings must be addressed and corrected based on the entity's assessment of the risk posed by the identified security issues. Now, it is important because some vulnerabilities in some organizations would be a very high risk, but in a different organization it might not be very high risk because of the very environment it is in. So this clarification emphasizes the need for prioritizing the remediation efforts according to the potential impact of each vulnerability. And here we see again a summary of the change that we just discussed. So now there is a new requirement in PCI DSS 4, which is 11.4.7, which mandates that multi-tenant services provider support their customers in conducting external penetration testing. This was a real game changer. Because earlier, all these cloud providers like AWS, Azure, Google, they make a heck of a ruckus. They would make a hell of a ruckus in, saying that, okay, you can't do a testing on a premises because on our systems, because you are not the only one using it, and your usage of the systems might disrupt the working of somebody else. But with this change, 11.4.7, AWS and Azure have to allow their clients to test their systems for conducting the external penetration testing. As you understand, all these cloud providers, AWS, Azure, and all, these are all also certified on PCI 4. So by default, they have accepted these requirements. So you need not bother about this. This is meant for you. As a cloud user, this is very good for you. Then in PCI DSS 4, a new requirement 11.5.1.1 mandates that service providers utilize intrusion detection and or intrusion prevention techniques, IDS, IPS in other words, to detect, alert on, prevent and address covert malware communication channels. So what this means is that you need to have an IDS or an IPS, intrusion detection systems or intrusion prevention systems, to in case there is somebody who's planted a backdoor into your system or some malware is there which is opening a back channel into your systems, they should be able to detect and stop it, or at least raise an alert. So if you're a service provider, this is a mandate for you. Then it is 11.6.1. This is again a new requirement which is very interesting, which says that there should be a change in tamper detection mechanisms to alert for unauthorized modifications to HTTP headers and contents of payment pages are received by the consumer browser. Well, this is also important because if your website gets compromised, somebody can introduce the malware and content and then hijack the session of the consumer, thereby stealing the data. Earlier, change and tamper detection mechanisms, also known as FIM, file integrity monitoring systems, are only for the servers, program files, operating system files and locations. Well, this is the first time this also introduced that this has to include your file pages also, which includes the payment pages. So this is a very important requirement. And then in PCI DSS 3.2.1, there was requirement 11.2 that requires organizations to establish and maintain a security testing program, and this has been removed in PCI 4. You might say this is required. Yes, it is, but this is now being moved into another requirement that you will see as we go ahead. And then moving further in PCI DSS 3.2.1, requirement 11.1.2 mandates that organizations perform external network vulnerability scans at least quarterly and after any significant changes to the network infrastructure. This requirement under PCI DSS 4 has been moved to requirement 12.10.5. And this update now aligns with the requirement for incident response procedures in the event of unauthorized wireless access points being detected with other incident response systems, which ensures a more cohesive approach to security management. So this has been moved into requirement 12, which is my next video, and you'll see that in detail over there. And at last, in PCI DSS 3.2.1, there is requirement 11.5.1, which requires organizations to implement processes to detect and alert on any unauthorized wireless access points within the cardholder data environment. Now, this in the latest version, PCI DSS 4, has been moved to requirement 12.10.5, and this change aligns the requirement to respond to alerts generated by change detection solutions, also known, as I said earlier, as FIM, file integrity monitors, with other incident response items, ensuring a more integrated approach to security incident management. And this is the summary of the changes now in this last slot that I covered. And with this, we end our informative session on requirement 11, a summary of changes from version 3.2.1 to version 4 explained. And I really hope that this video helps you out and clears all your doubts on the changes and what you need to do to to keep safe and safeguard your customer data. So keep tuned, and in the next video, we'll be covering PCI DSS Requirement 12, and that would complete all my video for the summary of changes from version 3.2.1 to version 4. And I request you, urge you to share your valuable feedback in the comment section of this video to help us make this video more useful to you and future videos to be more acceptable to you and useful to you. And if you have any queries pertaining to the changes in the PCI DSS requirements, do drop us a mail on askus@vistainfosec.com, and we would be more than happy to help you. Thank you and have a good day. Bye-bye.